Welcome back to the Scotti-BYTE channel, and this is Scott. So today I wanted to discuss a little bit about package installers. And so in November of 2023, I created a tutorial on Linux package installers. And in that tutorial, I reviewed Snap, which uses the proprietary canonical Snap Store and has a huge number of things that you can install in your Linux. I also went over Flatpak, which is an open source repository that uses something called the Flat Hub. And of course, in Debian-based systems, such as Ubuntu and Linux Mint and Debian, you can use apt packages for installation. And finally, we have a self-contained image or self-contained images called app images. So GitHub, which it seems like just about every presentation that I make out here in regards to installing some self-hosted package, is a repository for web-based platforms that you can host. And it's basically a collaboration type site for these software products, and it was created back in 2008. And so GitHub is owned by Microsoft since 2018, but it is run as a separate and discrete company. And I think Microsoft's only involvement is the fact that they have the financial backing. So today I want to talk about something a little bit different, something called the GitHub-Store. And this is a pretty exciting new project. It was first released as version 1.0 here only back in November, 2 months ago. And so GitHub-Store is a cross-platform Play Store type of thing, and it is for GitHub software releases. And so GitHub-Store allows searching for repositories that provide certain cross-platform assets. And I know that's a little bit vague, but basically the GitHub-Store will detect the platform it is loaded on, and it will show you repositories either for APK, which of course are the Android repositories, EXE, which of course are for Windows, DMG, which is for macOS, and then Linux app images, Linux deb images, Linux RPM images, and so on down the route. So GitHub-Store is available for Linux, Windows, Android, and macOS. It's not yet available for iOS, and I know that's something they're working on. It's probably more difficult because of the restrictions involved with iOS. So the advantage of using the GitHub-Store is to have a utility that gives you a way of installing client-based applications that are applicable to your OS without hunting through GitHub. So, a lot of the projects we talk about are designed to build some kind of a server-based image that goes and runs in the background on some kind of server. I've reviewed, things running on the Inca server. So this is a little bit more like an app store for running the things in GitHub that are really meant to be more, I suppose, desktop client types of applications. So with that in mind, let's go take a look at the GitHub-Store. So here's the GitHub site for the GitHub-Store, and I'll provide this link in the show notes. But basically, it was popped up here about 2 months ago, I guess. And it's currently at version 1.5.1 as of the beginning of January. So as I scroll down here, it basically says the GitHub-Store is a cross-platform Play Store for GitHub releases. So basically, it works like any other store that you might have in, say, Windows or in Linux. There's an app store in just about every OS nowadays. And so as an example, here's the Ubuntu App Store from my Ubuntu desktop here. And obviously you can search for applications, you can install applications, and you can browse the availability of content. But most such app stores are going to be specific to the operating system that you're working in. And so the whole idea here is that GitHub-Store is cross-platform available. And part of the reason for that is because the projects at GitHub, many times they're Android projects, many times they're for Windows, many times they're for Linux or even macOS. And so therefore, this product attempts to try to provide that capability in sort of a cross-platform environment. And here I did a screenshot of GitHub-Store running on my Android phone. And so you can see here that it's providing a list of trending, new, or recently added projects here of various types. You can scroll through them. At the bottom, it'll let you do a list. You can favorite various projects and so on. Here's GitHub-Store running on my Ubuntu desktop system. And you can see here that it's got a listing of all sorts of trending things. So as an example, if I clicked on RustDesk and said View Details, it would come up and tell me the number of forks, the number of stars it's received. It will give me an option to install the latest version of RustDesk, which I've already done. If we scroll down through here, we can see information on the product just like we can when we go to the GitHub page. And so I can go down here and look at the new products, and I can also go over and look at the recently updated projects as well. So basically what this is just a storefront on the front end of GitHub, and it's not good for doing something like creating a discourse server or creating a Jitsi server. But what it might be good for is it might be good for doing something like installing the Jitsi client on your desktop. So let's say I did search repo and I went ahead and typed in Jitsi and did a search, and it would come back and hopefully find the Jitsi Electron client if I'm lucky. But it did. So here's the Jitsi Meet Electron client. Apparently there's also a plugin to integrate Jitsi Meet into Microsoft Outlook. So really, it's real nice to be able to do this sort of thing. Just to turn things around a little bit, I thought I would go ahead and boot up Windows 11 here. So over in Windows 11, I went to the GitHub-Store page, and I went into the releases section, which of course I'll provide in the release notes. But if we scroll down the page, there's the .exe, so we know that's the Windows version. Go ahead and click on it, and I'll go ahead and do a save. And now that we've done that, I'll go ahead and fire up the Windows File Manager. Go ahead and look at downloads, and then we'll execute that executable we just downloaded. Of course, we'll go and do the standard more info and run anyway. And then it'll go ahead and come up. It says, welcome to the GitHub-Store Setup Wizard. I do a next, and I do a next, and an install. And so this is pretty straightforward to install. And once it is complete, which it is right now, I'll do a finish. And then I should be able to click on the Windows Start button and type in GitHub. And there's the GitHub-Store app. So go ahead and launch it, and it will come up and show me the GitHub-Store here after a requisite amount of time where it has to set up. Okay, there we are again, and we're looking at the same types of applications. And of course, I have all my standard pop-ups in Windows that pop up all the time, just in case we miss something. And there we go. We got things like Power Toys and RustDesk under trending, and local send and net data and several other things we could install. So for example, if we wanted to install the RustDesk client, I can click on View Details and go ahead and say Install Latest. It'll go ahead and download it. It launches the installation. I accept the Terms of Agreement licensing EULA, and I do an install, and I do a yes, and then it goes ahead and installs the RustDesk client. So that's basically all there is to it. Not really much to using the GitHub store. So now let's go ahead and head over to my Linux desktop. Here we are on an Ubuntu desktop, and I went to the same releases page that I was in Windows. If we scroll down here, we can see that there is a .deb package that we want to go ahead and download. So to do that, I do a wget with that URL link that we just saw, and it goes ahead and downloads that copy. Now to install that, all I have to do is install that deb image with a sudo apt install. And so it'll prompt me for my sudo password, and it should go ahead and install the GitHub store. In looking at this message down here that says download is performed unsandboxed as root, this is really just an informational message, and we probably could have avoided that if I did a sudo dpackage-i, but that's a message you get when you do a sudo apt install from a local file. To run our GitHub store, go ahead and click on the app drawer and click on GitHub Store. GitHub Store will go ahead and launch just like it did over in Windows. And since I prefer the dark theme, I'm going to go ahead and click on the gear here and click on dark, and that will go into the dark theme. I can also choose various theme colors if I like as well. Here we go back to the main screen on the trending items. I'll click View Details just like I did in Windows for the RustDesk client, and I'll click on Install Latest. It prompts me for my sudo password. I go ahead and enter that, and it says that it is currently installing. And then it says my installation is complete. Now I can go ahead and click my app drawer and click my RustDesk, and here we have RustDesk up and running. Something you may have noticed on the menu bar is we don't have a proper icon for the GitHub store. We just have this little gear looking thing. And if I right click on it, it doesn't even give me an option to pin it to the menu bar. So let's go ahead and fix that. I'm going to click on Quit to go ahead and quit the application. Let's edit the desktop definition file for GitHub Store with the sudo nano /usr/share applications GitHub Store. And once we do that, it will go ahead and bring us into the nano editor with the definition of the desktop entry. Just for neatness, I'm going to go ahead and scroll down here, and after the icon, I'll go ahead and paste in a line that indicates what the startup window manager class is. I'll do a Control-O and enter to write the file out, and a Control-X to exit the nano editor. Now when I go back down here and I launch my GitHub store again, this time it comes up and we have a proper icon. And not only that, but I can right click it and pin it to the dock, so that when I go up and exit the application, it still appears on my toolbar. When I click on it, once again, it will launch back up. It of course remembers the dark theme that we set earlier. I really like GitHub Store for the ability to install applications on my Ubuntu desktop, my Windows desktop, macOS, and Android. I use GitHub all the time, and considering the fact that there are so many now desktop client applications that run in GitHub, GitHub-Store is really a welcome addition as a fantastic utility for GitHub. Anyway, that's it for today. Please subscribe and like to the channel, and don't forget to hit the notification bell, and we'll see you next time.